Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Friday FARcast. I'm Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live and direct from Austin, Texas. And here we are. It's been 5 days now since the chaos and madness of what took place in Las Vegas is still percolating, and we are still searching for answers in the midst of everything. And the answers that we're being given are clearly not good enough, because this is one sloppy event. Now, there's a lot of misdirection that's taking place. Remember, Las Vegas is a city that is built on deception. We have countries and cities like the city of Paris or the Luxor or whatever hotel it is that's supposed to evoke a period or a place. That's what the city is built upon. It's built on purely on deception. And deception that you actually have a chance of winning money there. I've won some money there. I've lost more money than I've won. Let's be clear about that. That's a deception. It's all built on deception. They've got great magic shows. They're all built on deception. And even the land itself, which is just nothing but really it's just desert. It's just desert. And to be able to create that almost like a mirage out of the desert, isn't that what Steve Wynn's hotel is, the Mirage? Steve Wynn, the first person to actually officially put backscatter devices in the entrance of his hotels. Now, apparently, because I have done some research, and these little things pop up. I got a piece of information from somebody who works in the casino world. I don't know this person, but they've had backscatter machines already in place for years now in Vegas. They're just hidden. So they know exactly what you're bringing in to the casino, which really brings some interesting questions to the whole Michael Bennett thing when there was a shooting after the Mayweather and McGregor fight in Las Vegas. So, but the backscatters are coming, and Steve Wynn is the first first owner of a casino to bring them in. Of course, Steve Wynn is also like part of the Trump machine too, isn't he? Or at least he was. I don't know if he's one of the people that stepped off. But Steve Wynn and Sheldon Adelson, who's a casino owner and a big Trump supporter, also part of the mix. So Las Vegas is a city of deception, misdirection, prestidigitation, and this is what's happening now with the event in Las Vegas. I guess we'll call it the 10-1 event. Yeah, that harvest thing, right? It was like Harvest 91, and it happened on 10/01 or 1, or the first day of October, right? So the first day of October, and then we have Harvest 91, 9/11. There's a lot of 9/11 signatures, which we've talked about, including, and this is what Jerry brought up. Jerry brought it to my attention that 10/1 is 9 months and 11 days after the inauguration. How about that? That was a good one. 9 months and 11 days after the inauguration. There's another 9/11 signature. And you can see in the media where they said that the shooter shot between 9 and 11 minutes. So we have to ask ourselves the question here. Are these clues that blatant? Right? Or is this some higher intelligence that is linking us up and actually informing us that this event is the new 9/11, this event is linked to 9/11, and of course this event is linked to the JFK shooting through 9/11, that they're all somehow connected. Now, I know it's just kind of random, but I was playing with the word Mandalay Bay. And, you know, some of the kind of iterations you get out of Mandalay are Mandela and Mandili, meaning Dealey Plaza in Dallas. And it's important to understand why we're kind of referencing the JFK piece here. You know, I'm going to get into it. Lee Harvey Oswald is considered a patsy. But Lee Harvey Oswald had connections. Like, he wasn't just some random schmo that was picked out of the crowd. He had connections. Of course, there was a very interesting photo of Lee Harvey Oswald with what's his name, Ted Cruz's dad, down in New Orleans. You know, linking Ted Cruz and his dad up with the assassination of JFK, which was kind of brilliant on the Trump side to do that, because Ted Cruz was kind of the last obstruction between Donald Trump and the White House. Everybody else had been knocked off, and Ted Cruz was the final piece until he got to Hillary, and then he knocked her off as well. But Lee Harvey Oswald was connected. He was definitely connected. And was in the wrong place at the wrong time, probably for the wrong reasons. It may not even have been there to begin with. Stephen Paddock may be this version of Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, earlier in the week, I played a recording from one of his neighbors that said he was basically just a regular guy. Okay, and that could be the case on one level. That he's a regular guy, maybe it was a total setup. Now there's other information coming out claiming that he was a pilot for the CIA. Now he owned 2 planes. This is really important to piece together and understand. He owned 2 planes. He used to work for Lockheed Martin. So there are some very interesting pieces here that could give some weight and context to this theme that Stephen Paddock was not your typical guy with a couple of planes that like to fly around on his spare time. Owned a couple of houses. In fact, I did a property check on Stephen Paddock. I should bring it up. The amount of properties listed in this guy's name were tremendous. Now, he didn't own all of them, but his name was listed to a huge number of properties. And what's really interesting is not only did he own a house in Nevada, he also owned a house in Mesquite, Texas. He owned a property in Mesquite, so he had 2 mesquites. This is true. I paid $3.95 to look at his property listings and get his birth date, which is how I knew he was an Aries. So perhaps there's more that meets the eye with Stephen Paddock. Now, I also made a reference to a new film coming out, I think it's this today. I think it's coming out today with Tom Cruise called Made in America. And it's about the life of Barry Seal. Barry Seal was a major drug and gun runner for the CIA, and Tom Cruise plays Barry Seal. So it's really interesting we're getting this Barry Seal movie as we're seeing this whole Stephen Paddock piece unfold before our very eyes. So was Stephen Paddock a patsy in the sense that he was just a regular guy caught up in doing some regular gambling? He was gambling 15 minutes before he theoretically went up to the room and theoretically started shooting people. Is that what was happening? Was he that kind of patsy, or was he a Lee Harvey Oswald kind of patsy? Now, there are some bits of evidence coming out of the Sorcha Fall world that he actually had taken a huge amount of arms out of Israel, and that the Israelis were after him. Yeah, you know, look, there's plenty of arms to go around. I don't know if he had to go to Israel to steal them. But it's another kind of strange anomaly in this case. Another strange anomaly is that Paddock converted to Islam 6 months ago, and ISIS claims that this, you know, I mean, what doesn't ISIS just become transparent and put out a list of everybody that's converted? Wouldn't that be helpful? Remember who's behind ISIS. Let's be clear about this. This is not some random rogue organization that popped up in the desert just because they were sick and tired of being pushed around. And by the way, ISIS never goes after Israel. Never, ever, 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 ever. If they hate the United States so freaking much, then wouldn't they go after a country that theoretically the United States is, in bed with? Wouldn't they go after Saudi Arabia? Because Saudi Arabia is doing business deals with the United States and getting all kinds of weapons. This would be, enemy by proxy. So, this whole ISIS thing, I think, has to be taken with a real grain of salt. And maybe that's the case. Maybe he did a Muslim flip-flop like John Brennan did. I don't know, but we have to understand who ISIS is. It's not like just some random kind of radical group that just popped up out of nowhere. Some Sirocco in the desert just didn't whip them up. They were created. They had funding, they had money, they had training. They found evidence that there were food supplies, rations in ISIS camps that originated in Israel. I mean, come on now. Let's be upfront and honest about the whole thing. So we have to be really careful when all these ISIS claims are made and asserted. And, does it exist as a group? Sure it does, because it was created. And all of the first ISIS videos were coming through one woman who was based out of New York City. And they were all studio videos. Probably the same people that did the Abu Ghraib productions. You don't have to look very far. So this is what's happening now. You have a sheriff who said, oh, well, this guy could have done it by himself, in a rare moment of honesty. And then, of course, you have the FBI saying, you better watch your mouth, buddy. The intelligence agencies are all over this sheriff. This thing is hot. It is hot. And when something's hot, you got to be real careful, because what's going to happen? People are going to say, what the hell is going on here? And there are people that died. There are people that got hurt. There's kind of this weird false flaggy thing going on. They had crisis actors. They had a crisis actress show up. There's some weird stuff happening. There's like these strange hybridization overlay. But there are some real things going on there. And so we have to be really careful that we just don't summarily say, oh, another false flag, nobody died. We have to be careful with that. Because it sure bit Alex Jones in the ass. That's not to say that, the events can't be driven by crisis actors or actresses. Like, who's the woman that said what she said with that TV interview about we're all going to die tonight? Like, who is she? Like, I'd like to know more about her. Where does she come from? What does she do? And it was this other thing that kind of, excuse me if I'm being a bit of a ricochet, but I was watching a football game last night, and they were talking about a young woman who worked for the Los Angeles Rams who had died in Las Vegas. Her last name is Duarte. And the other night, I was watching the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they were honoring the same woman. Now, who does she work for? Does she work for the Diamondbacks? Does she work for the Rams? Does she work for both? I don't know. But the same woman was used in football and baseball to memorialize or seal the event. And I'm not saying she didn't die. I just think it's unusual. I think it's an unusual kind of piece. And maybe she did work for both teams. I don't know. I just see it, and I just report it as I see it, and I scratch my head and go, And if I had more time, I'd be able to research every single angle and aspect of this thing. So as I was sitting with my thoughts and kind of piecing the evidence as it comes together, One of the things that came up is the shell casings. Where are the shell casings, or where aren't the shell casings? You know, somebody put out a photo, somebody leaked a photo of the guy's room. How's that photo getting out? And the shell casings seem very inconsistent. Number one, there's not enough of them. I mean, the amount of shots he fired, that room should be littered with shell casings. I mean, littered with shell casings. And the way that the shell casings are kind of arranged and how the blood is spread across the shell casings is not consistent. And then we look at the strobing lights in the windows, which are theoretically supposed to be machine gun fire. But if that's the case, then the windows would be broken. And on further inspection, and the following day, we realize that those windows clearly are not broken. They're still intact. Now we do have the video, the audio of shooters on the, what is it, the 32nd and the 29th floor. It's possible. I think it's possible that came out of the LVPD on the scanner. So unless they're reading off a script, that's what they're going from. That's what they're reporting. Now, I'm feeling as if perhaps no shots were fired now from the Mandalay, and that the majority of the bullets are on the ground. That there were actually shooters embedded in the audience. And there were shooters all over Vegas, because the hotels themselves, other hotels themselves, had talked about or reported shootings in their lobbies, or there were lockdowns. So again, this goes with the whole misdirection piece that Las Vegas is famous for. And that if we focus solely on the Mandalay, we're looking in the wrong direction. And that really our gaze should be trained at a horizontal level and not a vertical one. That's my latest takeaway. Let's see where that goes. Now, when you have a hot event like this and people are scratching their heads thinking to themselves, what the hell's going on here? They have time in their hands, and more eyewitness accounts come out, or more cell phone videos come out, and all of a sudden the official narrative doesn't look so official anymore. This is where we have to be very careful, because very quickly there could be another event happening, and that's my sense. And what it does is it gets us to stop talking about Las Vegas, and now we're on to the next thing. Okay, so we've got to be really, really aware and awake here, because we've got another weekend coming up. We have the National Football League on Sunday. We have college football on Saturday. And if we have another public event or public shooting, we won't be talking about Las Vegas. We'll be talking about the next one. We'll be talking about college campuses. We'll be talking about football stadiums, baseball stadiums, anything, security in general. Security in general. So I'm just throwing it out there. You know, this is what we do. We try to look at the past, and we see cyclical patterns, and we just apply them to the future. It's not that hard. And I'm not looking for it. I'm not wishing that it happens. No. I actually enjoy my freedom. I actually like walking around and going to events without having to submit to some kind of biometric intervention. Or at the very least, walk around with a sense that anything could happen, percolating fear and mistrust and anxiety amongst myself and 50,000 other people. I don't go to live events like that anymore. I haven't for a long time. The last time I went to a major baseball game was a disaster in Dallas at the Rangers game. It was like the worst experience I've ever had at a baseball game. Like, we got thrown out of the game. It's incredible. Our baseball team, my 10-year-old, our 11-year-old baseball team, We were 11 years old. No, 10U. We were 10U. I was 11U. 11U. Yeah. No, I was 10. I'm sorry. Yeah, seems like a long time. Anyway, our 10-year-old baseball team got tossed. We got tossed out of a Rangers game. All of us. Crazy story. Crazy story. That was. I mean, I did go to the UT game. 2 years ago. That was fun. But that was it. That was the last time I went to a big event. Just not into them. I've been here 5 years and I've never gone to ACL Live. Never. It's happening this weekend. I'm not going. Strange. So that's where we are with Las Vegas. That's the latest I have to report. Is that you want to focus your gaze on a horizontal level. Shots on the ground. And more drilling down on Stephen Paddock, please. That would be very helpful. And anybody who's out there in Las Vegas in law enforcement, I really doubt you're listening to my program. But if somebody who knows somebody is listening to this program, please have them come forward to the best of their ability with any kind of information. Because this is a tipping point. I'm telling you right now, this Vegas event is a tipping point. It's an important one. So what I want to do is today's going to be kind of a long show, and I want to play something that's going to be 2 hours in length, and hopefully the audio will be pretty good. I'm just going to be playing it off of the computer. So unless these guys, man, they always take this time on Friday to make the grounds really nice. And if I start the audio, I'm afraid that they're whizzing and buzzing and chopping and whatever the hell it is they do out there. Will get in the way of the sound. But I'm going to do it anyway because I want to have some time at the end of the show to thank some people for donating to the show. So what I want to do is I want to set the stage for the next 2 hours. I came across Kevin McMahon through a mutual friend, Linda, who lives up on Hornby Island in British Columbia. And Linda knew Kevin from that community. And Kevin was, unfortunately, Kevin was brilliant. He was a totally brilliant mind, and he was a real decoder. You know, he was a real matrix buster. Like you know, he was kind of almost in a class by himself. There are a few people in the world that are really good at it. You know, I'm not too bad, but Kevin was in a league of his own. You know. And when you are in this world and you see people who are able to make these associations in such a way that they get what you get and then they get more, you're like, wow, okay, this guy's got it. You know, there's a gene. There's a really interesting gene that some people have, and Kevin had it. And he and I would talk a little bit, not a whole lot. Offline, or we would have some kind of interaction on Facebook, because I think Kevin was a member of the kitchen sink group. And it was brought to my attention probably about maybe a year ago that Kevin had leukemia. And it was a very kind of volatile type of leukemia. And he did his best. He went into treatment and did everything that he was being told to do by the medical establishment. And Kevin lived for about a year after his diagnosis, if I'm not mistaken. And he just left. He passed away on Saturday, and apparently he was with a group of his friends. And, you know, I can't think of another way to go. I mean, to be around people that love you and support you, and I mean, that would be, I mean, you know, you're there and they're just seeing you off, and, you know, it just brings tears to my eyes, you know, thinking about the kind of love and real human contact that Kevin had at the end of his life. You know, we should all be so lucky. Conversely, you know, I reported the death of another friend who also passed away on Saturday. And he was a guy, Stan McDonald, who, that's weird, McMahon and McDonald. That's strange. Anyway, Stan was a guy that I managed against and knew down at the fields. And I, you know, was a good guy. Apparently Stan was on some kind of medication, and he either took the wrong medication or he took the wrong dose, and he took a nap with his wife, and she woke up from the nap, and Stan didn't. So these two events were people that I knew, and both passing away on Saturday. Anyway, I wanted to remember Kevin and his brilliance by replaying a show that we did, and God, it must have been about 3 years ago now. There was an event that took place in Australia, and it was a shooting at the Lind Cafe, L-I-N-D-T, Lind Cafe, and I did a piece on this on the website, and maybe I can bring that up. And I'll put it on the website so people can see what we were talking about. And it was kind of in the midst of all these other shootings that were taking place in and around that time. You know, that Umpqua Community College shooting, that took place on the 1st of October 2 years ago. We've had a litany of these shootings: Umpqua Community College, Columbia, South Carolina, Roanoke, Virginia. We had the Pulse nightclub. We also had Santa Barbara, and apparently there was supposed to be another shooting that was going to take place on the same night as the Pulse nightclub at a gay pride event in Los Angeles. But the shooter turned himself in, because he was trained as a CIA patsy, just like Omar Mateen was. James Wesley Howell is the so-called shooter's name. And I don't know where his trial is at this point, but that guy's sitting on a lot of information. I mean, the whole thing is just ready to just, blow up like a cheap paint factory. They just keep, trying to run reality with these psyops and divert us and move our emotional signals around and make legislation and get people pissed off. And you know what? These reality hackers, their day is coming. People are just going to realize that, their shit is being messed with all the time. And it's going to be the best thing that can happen to this country and this world. And as long as we can keep each other off each other's backs and from each other's throats in the process, we might actually have an ability to wake up and finger the perps, if you know what I mean, instead of the perps fingering us. Speaking of which, what about Harvey Weinstein? That guy's going to go down. That's going to be interesting. And he's on the left. He's a lefty. He's a pal of Clinton and Obama, and he's got to run the gauntlet now. Anytime you hire David Boies, you know you're in trouble, because David Boies is one of the big guns. He's one of the big boys. So I just keep trying to buy some time here because of this well-meaning person making a living outside of my apartment, the world headquarters of Free Association Radio. I just keep trying to buy a little more time so that he can just turn that thing off. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just start the show and I'll go down there and talk to him. Say, hey, can you go over here for about 15 minutes? Maybe a little bit more. All right, I'm going to fire it up. So this is Kevin McMahon and I, and let me tell you when the show is from, if I can find it here. This one out here. Just have it punched up. That's right here. So Kevin McMahon and I did this on the 19th of September in 2014. So this is 3 years ago. And on the show, I said we'll be looking back at 9/11. So Kevin said that 9/14 would be the false flag. The next false flag. Okay, so why don't we do this? Let me just cue this up and fire away. Here we go. This is myself and the late great Kevin McMahon decoding the future. And this is from 2014 on the old Friday FARcast over on Blog Talk Radio. Here we go.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon and welcome to yet another edition of the Friday FARcast. I'm Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from South Central Texas, also known as Austin, the state capital and music city of America. Welcome again to another edition of the show, and today we are going to be graced and blessed with a very interesting researcher who has some powerful discoveries and revelations around a date that's just right around the corner, 9/14. That's Kevin McMahon, and we'll bring him on in just a second to break this date down and why it's significant. You know, in history, we have moments in time in prior to dates or prior to events where people have premonitions and people are able to break things down via astrology or numerology or some form of dream, prophecy. And when it happens, after the fact, it's fairly shocking to see that there was some kind of communication from the future that some of us were able to pick up on and decode. Such is the nature of prophecy, and it comes to us in many forms and guises. And we're living in a time what some people can say is revelatory and prophetic. On a biblical or religious side of things, it's often talked about that these are the end days, the time before the rapture and the revelation, and all the good people get to cut out and have a party up in heaven while they watch the rest of us suffer here on earth. But in any case, we are certainly living in a time that is dramatic, and it's filled with events on a broad global scale, much of which is the goal of creating more and more chaos in our lives, because when there's more chaos, obviously there's more of an option for control. After the chaos, ab order chow, order out of chaos. And so here we are. We're just 2 days away from 9/14, and Kevin was brought to my attention by a listener of the show, Linda, and apparently Kevin has also been on Red Ice Radio with Henrik, and he's got a new video out on 9/14, which I've linked to from the show page. So if there's more information you'd like to glean from Kevin's video, you can go there. The link's right in the show page. But right now, let's go to the source himself. Let's bring on Kevin McMahon. Hi, Kevin. How are you today?
Hey, Robert. I'm doing really well.
Great. Well, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for delving into this very powerful and potentially prophetic date and time. Before we get into your methodology, maybe you could just tell folks a little bit about yourself so they know, kind of who you are and what some of your qualifications are, even if you need any qualifications for this sort of thing. But why don't you just break it down for us? Tell us a little bit about Kevin.
Well, let's see. I've been working with Google Earth, looking at different alignments. After seeing a video by Scott Onstott called Secrets in Plain Sight that your listeners might be aware of, and if they're not, I recommend checking it out. It's nearly 4 hours, but it's pretty awesome. But anyhow, I've had a lifelong interest in geography and in maps and how those maps relate to the landscape and relate to me. And I even studied in university. And so I've been looking at the connections between the geography of the Earth, like the topography and the landforms, and the way various ancient obelisks or ancient sites on the Earth are placed and modern sites. So basically, the powers that be, whoever they are, have been encoding things in architecture and in using obelisks and using, like the Great Pyramids and Machu Picchu and all these things throughout history. And so I've been looking at that for the last 2.5 years or so, and it's the depth of connections is just mind blowing. It's unbelievable, actually.
So they have created, in essence, a symbolic and architectural map for what purpose? To be able to show and tell, hide in plain sights, particularly program. What's the purpose behind their architecture and where these buildings or these megaliths or monoliths are erected?
Well, I'm not privy to their actual, their inner workings, of course, but I have my own theories about it, and I think it's partly it's more significant than just marking these various spots. I believe that there's power spots on the Earth, and that there's points in the Earth grid, in the energy grid of the Earth, that are much like acupressure points on the human body. So, you put a needle into a particular acupuncture point, and it has a large effect. You move over half an inch, and it's not going to have any effect. So I think that they place things on the Earth as part of their control grid. And the reason I think this is because what I've seen written in the landscape is very obvious once you come to see it, and it's been kept secret. Like I said, I studied geography in university, but I was never taught any of this, and so I just came to it through my own research. So I think that it's not just showing things, it's not just show and tell, and it's actually, they have powerful effects, and they're part of what they use to control us, in addition to all the other things like mind control and police state and all the obvious ones.
So they're tapping into the ley lines, essentially, and creating a network of a power grid or a power structure. Is that correct?
In my opinion, yeah. Okay.
How significant was it that Obama was just at Stonehenge?
There's a prime example. Well, from what I've seen, what makes the point powerful is people's attention to them. So by Obama going to Stonehenge, in my theory, it draws the whole world's attention to Stonehenge in a way that I don't know what else he could do to draw the attention as effectively as having, other than some violent event. But, Obama going there is just remarkable. And the fact that it happened on September 5th, if you do the numerology of it, 9 plus 5 is 14. Well, that's the importance of the sevens. That's kind of getting ahead of myself. But, the numerology is significant, the date that he went to, considering, my prediction for September 14th. So.
Well, he also seemed high as a kite, by the way. He seemed stoned at Stonehenge.
Yeah, I like his, how cool is that statement?
Yes.
That's pretty funny.
In a weird way, he was very disarming and charming in a way that he doesn't often appear in public, and maybe that was part of it. But he seemed to be having a pretty good time at Stonehenge. Okay, so he's there, 9, 5, there's the 14, the significance of the 14, and it draws our attention to Stonehenge. So through our attention, we are theoretically energizing that location, theoretically. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the way I see it from the evidence I've seen, yeah.
Okay. Are there any other public figures or any other the sacred sites or structures that have been visited recently that might correlate to this larger theory that you're about to break down for us?
Well, the Manitoba Legislative Building, your listeners may be aware, was designed, it sits in the center of North America, and it was designed as a Masonic temple secretly. So there's a whole pile of symbology in the Manitoba Legislative Building that it indicates that it's designed after Solomon's temple. So the significance of this, there's 13s all over it. Like there's, for example, the Golden Boy statue, which is really Hermes on the very top of it, is 13 feet tall. And directly underneath there is a room called the Pool of the Black Star, and the 8-pointed black star sitting right below the statue of Hermes is also 13 feet across. And there's quite a few other 13s all over the Manitoba Ledge. So 13 days, on September 1st, 13 days before September 14th, 2014, what appears to go across the wire, in Canada, it's the CBC News is the major Canadian Broadcasting Corporation is the major news source of the country, and 13 days before September 14th, out comes a story telling all this about the Manitoba Ledge and its esoteric symbolism. So there's an example, kind of synchronicity, because the Manitoba Ledge plays right into this. And one other thing that I saw happen was that they displayed 3 artifacts from when they went to kill Osama bin Laden in his compound, and they just displayed 3 of those at the 9/11 Memorial Museum. And when did they do that? Oh yeah, a week before, so 7 days before September 14th. So, and the importance of the sevens I can get to, but in a bit. So there's 2 more things that are talismanic, in my opinion.
Okay, very interesting stuff. How did you? Obviously you saw the Google video, kind of a hidden in plain sight video. But how did you get turned on to this? What switch was flipped in your consciousness that said there's something going on here? I have an interesting capacity with numbers and able to correlate these sorts of things. When did that start to happen for you?
Well, it was right after I saw the video, because my whole thing is I've seen so much lies in anything that's written, or anything that other people produce that I can't verify for myself, that I just sort of, people make a claim about this or that, and I just I shrug, it's like, well, it's not my experience, so I'm not going to throw my belief into it, because I've just seen so many falsehoods. you know, by everyone, by the mainstream media, by, you know, other researchers passing on information that they've heard someplace. You know, there's people that are out there putting out disinformation. There's tons of people that are paid to do it, you know, and then there's just people who put it out naively because they heard something that really resonates with them, and so they perpetuate. Anyhow, so when I saw Scott Onstott's video, and he's making all these, you know, showing all these incredible connections about things laid out and distances between them and orientations and, you know, angular, you know, angles between different sites and stuff. Well, of course, I'm going to go check it out, right? So I fire up Google Earth and I start looking at his stuff, and it's like, yeah, oh yeah, that is true. Oh yeah. And then before you know it, I just start seeing things myself. And so that was 2.5 years ago, and I've just seen so much that I can't even, it's just, but it's really unbelievable. Like the level that the Earth, you know, popular now that we're living in a simulation, you know?
That's right.
It's hard to even imagine that it's not a simulation after you see all this. There's just so much evidence that it's just constructed by I don't know who, that it's just a big put-up job. Like, I know that sounds pretty crazy, but it's just, what's written there is just, it's just so deep, it's ridiculous.
Okay, well, I would agree with most of that, by the way. And I would also, well, I'm also interested in what's beyond the simulation, because that's, you know, that's where it gets, I think, kind of sexy and potentially even liberating for humanity. All right, so let's drop into this. Let's talk about 9/14. A lot of people were thinking that since there were 11 planes that went missing, that 9/11 would be the day that theoretically ISIS would unleash these 11 planes onto American cities or football games or malls or whatever, and we would have this next event. 9/11 has passed. We're here. We're talking. 9/14 is 2 days away. How did you come to 9/14? And let's get into the interconnected web of numbers and events, and perhaps even formations, buildings, megaliths. Let's do this.
Okay. Well, I know I'm making this prediction, and it's only 2 days before the actual event, so I guess it's good that I don't have to wait too long. And I also want to note that I've never put out a prediction before. It's never been such a strong indication for me. And I just have to say, I hope I'm wrong, because given what they've done and what they state that they're going to do and that, it's, you know, I don't want it to happen. But anyhow, having said all that, the way I came to it, it started with Christine Lagarde. She is the chief executive officer of the International Monetary Fund. And she gave a press conference earlier this year, back in January, when she was talking numerology. She was talking about dates and the Magic 7. So I've never seen any video by any elite where they're explicitly laying out numerology for people. It was just, it's remarkable. And that video is included in the video that I just published, like you say, it's linked to. And so it brought my attention to the 7, and it gave me permission to start looking at 7s, you know, and how they relate to this whole game. Before that, the numerology was always, for me, you know, there was a lot of coincidences and things, but I couldn't really put my whole belief system into it, you know. Still had my doubts and whatever. But as soon as an elite, you know, and she's the top person in the International Monetary Fund, and she starts pointing it out. She says, like, for example, it's been 70 years since the Bretton Woods Conference, since the IMF was actually created. She's like, you know, you dropped a 0, you're left with 7. 2014, you know, you drop the 0, 2 times 7 is 14. I mean, these are things she's saying out of her own mouth, right? And it, what's the other one? 25 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall, 2 plus 5, 7, and et cetera. So, all right, so that's where I came up with September 14th, because I thought, well, if she's actually identifying a date, if that's what the purpose of this video is to show us a date, and that's, of course, just pure speculation, then what might you look at? You might look at July 7th, because, July is the 7th month, 7/7, or you might look at July 21st or July 14th. And so, those dates. And then also you may look at September, because if you may know that Sept comes from 7, and it was the 7th month in the Roman calendar. So you can really think of September 11th as 7/11, or you can think of September 14th as September, as 7/14/2014. So you get 7, the 14th is 7/7, 2014 is 7/7. You still there?
Yep.
Okay, I just heard some interference. Anyhow, so there's 7s in that way, and then even if you look at 9/14/2014, 9 plus 1 plus 4 is 14, and then of course 2014 you get 14 again, and even 2 plus 4 plus 1 is 7. So there's just 7s all over this date. Now the other piece is that it is 13 years and 3 days since from 9/11 to September 14th, and the 13 is very valued by the powers that be, whoever they are. Like, for example, I already told you about the Manitoba Legislative Building that has the 13s all over it, and the back of the dollar bill, if anyone's is aware of this, there's 13s all over that as well. Like the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, there's 13 levels. The eagle is holding 13 spears in one hand, and then it's holding an olive branch in the other that has 13 leaves and 13 olives on it, and there's 13 stars in the seal, whatever you'd call it, above the eagle, and then there's 13 stars and stripes in the shield of the eagle, and sort of it just sort of goes on and on. So they're pointing out the value of this, and that was the beginning of all this journey. So should I just continue?
Yeah, the whole Christine Lagarde thing was really fascinating, because it just came right out of nowhere, and she reminded me of any number of women, older women, that I would run into at New Age parties in Marin County. That's how strange it was. And now, apparently, she's in trouble, by the way. She's being sort of fingered for corruption. Are you aware of this?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so she's in hot water.
Sacrifice. Pardon me?
Yeah, she's in hot water now. So I just thought I'd pass that along to the listeners who may want to understand where Christine Lagarde is currently. So, well, let's keep going. Let's keep breaking this down. Okay,
so a while back, I've been looking at obelisks in Rome, and there's 13 ancient obelisks in Rome. 8 of them are from Egypt, actually from Egypt, so there's only 29 ancient Egyptian obelisks in the world, and Rome has 8 of them, so that's quite a few, right? And then they have 5 that are ancient Roman obelisks. So they've been placed around the city and they orient to different things, right? So, for example, there's 2 obelisks, and not just the obelisks, but the street grids. So, for example, there's 2 obelisks that align with Stonehenge, and there's a big long street that also lines up between those 2 obelisks directly with Stonehenge. So that's showing me that the Romans knew about Stonehenge and valued it with their alignments. And these things were done centuries ago. So so that's one of them, and there's others that I won't get into right now. But when I was looking all this, I noticed that there was this remarkable one where it includes, along the line, there's 3 obelisks, so 3 of the 13, which for me resonated with September 14th being 13 years and 3 days after 9/11. So there's 3 obelisks along this line. There's a statue of Neptune, which is along this line. There's a fountain of Triton, which is just off the line by, I don't know, 100 meters or something, 300 feet for in the States. And so Triton is the son of Poseidon, and Poseidon is the Greek analog of Neptune. So it's basically Neptune's son. It has 2 of the 7 pilgrimage churches in Rome are along this line. It has 3 of the 7 hills in Rome. There's 7 hills in Rome. And it also has the most major basilica to the Virgin Mary in Rome, and which is also it's one of the 4 major basilicas as well, and it sits atop one of these 7 hills of Rome. And what's the other piece to it? Okay, that's enough. So there's all of these things that have been placed. And the street grid, of course, too. There's 3.3 kilometers of street grid. Oh, and there's the Basilica of the Holy Cross in Jerusalem, it's called. And the reason it's called in Jerusalem is because when it was founded, they brought in actual dirt from Jerusalem, and then part of the foundation is stone from Jerusalem. So that sits at the very end of this alignment. And okay, and that's one of the 7 pilgrimage churches. That's one of them, and the Basilica of Mary is one of the other ones. Anyhow, so you line all of this up. Oh, and there's 2 tridents in the street grid along this alignment. So you have Neptune's son, and Neptune with his trident, and then you have 2 tridents in the street grid of Rome. One of them's even called Tridente, if I'm pronouncing it right, which is, trident in Italian. So there's just no mistaking all of this. And it points directly, and I mean directly, to the spot of the JFK assassination in Dallas.
Interesting.
And yeah, it kind of blew me away. So this was months ago, and it was Mark Gray kind of turned me on to this. It doesn't matter, but in Dallas, where the assassination occurred, is another trident in the street grid. So you have the tridents in Rome, you have the 3 obelisks. There's just so much along this alignment, and then it ends up ending at a trident. So from there, at the time, I even realized that this flows into Highway 77. So this trident just turns right into Highway 77 that runs down to the Canada-U.S. border. So there the 7s appear again. Now, if there are 2 tridents that are sitting at the 9/11 Memorial Museum in New York.
That's right.
They're very prominent. They're just like, it's right there.
Yep.
So that's what kind of clued me in. Well, perhaps JFK was the opening ritual in this, trident of rituals. And 9/11, like if you think about how the JFK assassination shaped the course of American history, it was just a major event. Then September 11th has 2 tridents. So there's a trident in the street grid of JFK, then all of a sudden there's 2 tridents appearing at 9/11. And so that's what led me to come to the conclusion that the third event is the 3rd trident, and that's coming. So
I have actually written fairly extensively about the JFK assassination as it relates to astrology and catapulting us onto another timeline. And to your point, how everything changes dramatically and historically from that moment forward is unequivocal. I mean, it's just clear that we're going in one direction, and then we literally fork off like a trident onto another direction. And 9/11 is connected to JFK in a huge way, based on players and also astrology as well. And that is a anchoring of that timeline. So you're talking a trident. The trident is a trinity. There's three parts to it. So you believe that 9/14 is the next part of that trinity, and perhaps hammering us deeper into this timeline and into this variation of the simulation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. Yeah. And, like, further evidence to me is they pull these false flags, or whatever you want to call them, and they always leave, there's always so many loose ends, right? You know, JFK with the lone gunman, but all the evidence is that just is impossible, right? Or 9/11 with the World Trade Tower, you know, WTC 7. I mean, there's the 7 again, right?
Right.
Falling, you know, just like as if. It's just so blatantly ridiculous that it's just, so they do this, they put the deception right out in the open for everyone to see, and it somehow causes cognitive dissonance in people who don't see it or deny it or whatever happens. And it puts some sort of rift in the general public's mindset, and you know, I don't know the reasons for that, but it just seems all related. So,
well, it feels to me like it's an energy field. Like cognitive dissonance is an energy field. You know, it's sort of, and it's almost set up like the opposition between, you know, positive and negative polarities, and in between those states, like here's the event that occurred, and if you untangle it, it looks one way, and here's the event on the other side of it, untangled, and how it appears another way. And so you have this opposition that's in play, and then everything exists inside or between the opposition, between those poles, and the cognitive dissonance is almost like a battery itself, where they can draw energy from.
That makes sense. I'd never thought of it that way. You know, and of course the Twin Towers have been, I'm sure you've thought about the Twin Towers as the Jakin and Boaz and the same duality that you're talking about, and they've now come together in the one World Trade Center. You know, it's all right there, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Sight, like Scott Onstott says.
So we've got this grid set up in Rome, which is very fascinating. Neptune, of course, we've been seeing so much Neptunian symbolism with everything from the tail of the Malaysian Airlines plane to the Maserati symbol to Ukraine. I mean, it's out there. It's out there. It is the year of the horse. Poseidon is the ruler of horses, even though he's in the sea, you know, and we're in the year of the horse. So there's so much of this is going on. You've lined it up in Rome. You see this trajectory taking it all the way to Dallas. And then you see the trajectory from Dallas headed back to New York in 9/11. And
I just have to say, the alignment from Rome to JFK is physical. You know, it actually points there. It's laid into, you know, it's laid out by the obelisk. The connection to 9/11, I haven't found actual physical connection, but it's all very symbolic, you know.
Sure.
I just wanted to interject that.
Okay. So now let's go a little bit further, a little bit deeper. What else is stacking up here for you with this?
Okay, well, you can look at 9/11, and there's sevens all over that, too. So there's, for example, Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, and the Pentagon has 7 floors in it. There's 5 above ground and 2 below ground. And it's 77 feet high, right? So just 7s all over it. Then you have, in between the World Trade Centers, there was a statue that's called the Sphere, that you might be familiar with. Mm-hmm. And it actually survived the collapse of the towers in more or less intact, and they were able to save it. Well, the Sphere happens to be 25 feet tall, so 2 plus 5 is 7, and it consists of 52 cast elements. So again, the 7, and if you go 25 plus 52, you get 77. So the other thing is the Flight 175 crashed into WTC-2, and it crashed in between, according to Wikipedia, which is, that's all anytime I state a fact, it's a Wikipedia fact. So I don't know what the truth is, but the Wikipedia is sort of, the powers that be, they're telling their story there. So that's what I'm able to use in my research. It's great. I don't really have to dig. It's just, So Wikipedia says that Flight 175, which you add up, is equal to 13, and it crashed in between the 77th and the 85th floors of WTC-2, which is, 77, and 8 plus 5 is 13. So this stuff's written all over it. In addition, the Pentagon sits on the 77 degrees west, 77.056 degrees west, to be accurate. So more 7s all over 9/11, and then, so we go back now to Dallas. So first, I'll talk about the Peace Pyramid in Astana. In the same way that the Manitoba Legislative Building, with all of its hidden symbology, sits at the center of the North American continent, the Peace Pyramid in Astana, which happens to be 77 meters tall, sits right at the center of the Eurasian continent, sort of in analog to the Manitoba Ledge. But it's sort of exoteric in that, it's really obvious. It's a pyramid. The angle of the pyramid, if you look at it, not the slope angle, but the angle between the two slopes, is the same angle as the angle of the Great Pyramid, 51.85 degrees, or 51 degrees, 51 minutes. All of the pyramids in Giza line right up with the Peace Pyramid. And that alignment actually goes through the Peace Pyramid and continues on to Lake Baikal, which is the deepest lake in the world. So they're marking not only elements, but they're marking the tallest and the deepest spots on Earth are part of their grid. So it doesn't just tie into human geography, it actually ties into physical geography too. But that's a bit of an aside. So the Peace Pyramid got this importance based on what they're showing me. Now, it was built and opened in 2006 to house the the Congress of Religious Leaders. I forget. Your listeners can look it up. And what that is every 3 years, there's the 3 again. All the leaders of all the major religions in the world gather there to have a conference and do what? I don't know, right? But that's just a fact. So it's this very important building, and it's very obviously a pyramid, and it's where all the religions meet. So it's as hidden as the Manitoba Ledge is. The Peace Pyramid mirrors it, and is again your 2 pillars, right? Mirrors it in a very overt way. So now, if you line up the Peace Pyramid with the JFK assassination, it points exactly to Waco, Texas, where there was another one of these false flag events where all the details don't make any sense. So the power of the B signature is all over it. So, and that alignment, Highway 77 snakes right along that alignment down to the U.S. border. So there's another thing.
What false flag are you referring to in Waco? Is that the Branch Davidians, or was that the explosion that happened at the refinery?
Well, both the explosion and the Branch Davidians are the explosions on Highway 77, and Branch Davidians, where they killed 51 people, that's right on. It's not right on the highway, but it's right on the Peace Pyramid, JFK. So yeah.
And that explosion, by the way, was near a town in Texas called Temple.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, and I saw a video that showed something very suspicious, like a missile coming in and hitting it. Right? I don't know if you saw that.
That's right.
That's what it looks like. Who knows, right? I mean, I don't know, but these things are out there, and when you see all this other stuff, I just don't, like, it seems like any time the media attention is a big frenzy on something, in my opinion, it's a false flag, and perhaps it's not, but that's where I go first, because just anytime I look at it, all these other ones seem to fit in. So anyhow, right. So now, why Sioux City? You know, I've sort of told this roundabout tale. Highway 77 goes through these points that I talked about, and it terminates in Sioux City. So you have Highway 77 terminating in Sioux City. Now, it also, if you go to Washington, D.C., there's, you know, that's all laid out in all sorts of sacred geometry, which I'm sure most of your listeners are aware. And Sioux City comes directly through the White House, directly to the Capitol building along Pennsylvania Avenue, which is the most important avenue in Washington. It's where all the presidents on their inauguration since Jefferson parade up that avenue, except Reagan. He paraded in the opposite direction one year for some reason, and then didn't parade one year because the weather was too inclement. So now Sioux City is pointed to by, you know, the White House, the Capitol building, and the most important avenue in Washington, which is basically the most important avenue in the world as far as the powers that be. Okay, now if that isn't enough, first I'll go back to the Twin Towers. That sphere that sits between the Twin Towers, you know, go to Wikipedia, and you'll see that sphere represents the Kaaba, the most important location of Islam, and so the whole complex was designed as Mecca, and the sphere representing the Kaaba is right where it is between the Twin Towers. So that is a segue. The Kaaba in Mecca, I just discovered last night, or was it the night before, is aligned with Sioux City. So you have both the most important avenue in the west and the Kaaba aligned with Sioux City. So,
and that's also where Highway 77 ends.
And that's where Highway 77 ends. That's right. It terminates.
Okay, so we have kind of a east to west trajectory from New York City and Pennsylvania Avenue, right? And the Kaaba itself.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a square.
Now the Kaaba, of course, I'm lining it up. It shows that it's aligned in Google Earth. Yeah. And so the resolution of that image is, you know, it's not 100%. So, but that's what it looks like. And I wouldn't be surprised given all this other evidence. So, and there you have it again, the mirror going on. You know, what's the big battle right now at ISIS? And I can't believe they called it ISIS. Like, too much. But you've got the battle of the ages between Islam and the West, and you have this very esoteric, obvious Washington, 9/11, all this stuff going on here. And there, it's the Kaaba. It's very hidden. You know, it's not like the alignment there it's very subtle and it's hidden. So you got this reflection again of the Twin Towers and you know, the polarities and everything going on as well. So.
Interestingly enough, Obama does not call it ISIS; he calls it ISIL.
Right. I don't know the significance of that, but there's probably something in that as well. You know.
Yeah.
I wonder what the numerology is for that.
Yeah, I don't know. ISIL, he's referring to the Levant, and the Levant is an actual region. And apparently the reason why he refers it to ISIL and the Levant is that this would be a kind of a crescent-shaped new Islamic state that would include a number of different countries already sort of in possession of their own sovereignty, well, specifically Syria. So he is already addressing this new Islamic state via the Levant. So that's why he uses ISIL versus ISIS, which everybody else uses and evokes or invokes the goddess, the fertility goddess of Egypt. And how much of a role do we think that this entity Isis would be playing in a 914 based event? Question mark.
Well, now this is, so Isis can be thought of sort of as the mother of all goddesses. She's, I don't know enough of that history to really communicate why that is, but that's one way to consider it. The other thing that's going on is Freeman Fly did a video talking about Columbia, that's the goddess that stands atop of the Capitol building in Washington, and then there's all sorts of other references to the fact that the powers that be worship Columbia, which is, of course, a derivative of Isis in some way. So it's kind of the mother of all, like the mother of all, even that statement, right? Like Saddam Hussein and the mother of all bombs and the mother of this and the mother of that. There's this goddess worship that's going on, even at the same time as the patriarchal society denigrates the feminine. So there's, again, this cognitive dissonance of duality. They actually, so, I don't know, this is my speculation, but there's power in there's power in that feminine, because that feminine represents the unmanifest and that's where everything comes from, all of our creativity and things. So that's what they're secretly manipulating via things in the manifest world, like their obelisks and their whatever else, their pyramids and their Machu Picchus and all of this stuff. So that's kind of my speculation on that. Mm-hmm. I don't really have the depth of my research to speak to it.
Yeah, I believe that Isis, the indication of Isis is that she's the mother of the new age. And
there you go.
So she's the handmaiden. She will give birth to the new age or the new order of the ages.
Yeah, that fits right in.
Yeah. So what can we expect on 914? What's your sense? Where are the numbers leading us? Locations, geography, places? What's up?
Well, I have no idea. I have no idea. The fact that Christine Lagarde was indicating the IMF in it suggests that there's financial, like the old financial collapse that we've all been expecting because of the ridiculous fiat currency financial system we're living under. I mean, everybody's been expecting it for years. Perhaps that's what's coming. That's what's coming. But that doesn't make any sense for Sioux City, Iowa, Perhaps Sioux City, Iowa is a red herring for researchers like me to look foolish by putting out a prediction or something. I have no idea, But whatever they're going to do, in my opinion, it's the closing of the trident. It's the end game. It's the big one. It's the big one. Whatever's going to happen. Is it going to be a nuclear weapon a nuclear bomb that they always talk about? I'm not sure. But at this point, I want to also mention the Hanford Nuclear Waste Facility in Washington?
Washington.
Washington. So that's the biggest repository in the States of nuclear waste, and it's leaking and it's toxic and it's awful. Now, my research hasn't been pointing to that nearly as strongly as it has to Sioux City, but it seems to be involved somehow. But I don't have my video doesn't really touch on that because I don't have enough conclusive evidence in my own mind to really. But I'm putting it out there because I wouldn't be surprised if that was involved somehow. So, so this is my speculation on it. Yeah.
Right. So we have an event. The event is for 9/14. Now, I've thought about some of this, and generally speaking, when the economic stuff happens, it almost always happens on a Friday.
Okay.
Because a couple things occur. The market shut down, and they can't get to it until the following week. There's generally a news cycle as it relates to sports. Games are played on Saturday, games are played on Sunday. And so something will happen and the correction can't take place until later on. Generally speaking, and you know, people get laid off on Fridays for the same reason. Right. So economically, while I would not necessarily rule that out, it just seems to me like the economic stuff generally falls on a Friday. That's just my experience. Now tomorrow we have the 13th, which is kind of interesting. Now the 14th is going to be Sunday, and that's when they play football games in America. And I've been thinking for a while that at some point, whether it's college or professional, there is going to be an event that happens at a stadium somewhere. So, you know, perhaps this might be in alignment with what you're talking about on the 14th. And just, you know, this past week, we've had this major sort of psychic push around the NFL and Ray Rice hitting his girlfriend, knocking her out. Roger Goodell. Now, that's an interesting name, by the way. Roger Goodell. If you break his name down, Roger means, pardon my language, to be fucked. To Roger. Okay. That's what it means. And then you have good, which is to be translated into God. And then you have L, which is the elite, or Saturn. And so he's a very interesting character just in terms of name alone, but also he is born, I believe, at 0 degrees Pisces, which is Neptune. And this goes back to your Trident piece. And everything that happened around this Ray Rice event happened with the full moon in Pisces. And so we have a Neptune once again, and then there's also the Trident. Now, Ray Rice happens to be an Aquarius. And everything that I've sort of broken down with this stuff is that we are moving from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age. And all these events conspire to end the Piscean age, which is why this Neptunian imagery is so prevalent. It's reminding us in some ways that this is over, and then we have this new age that's being brought to us. It's the age of the New World Order, essentially. And so we have a Piscean character and an Aquarian character in this NFL drama. And I did the astrology for the 14th of September, and I just looked at it briefly. And I did it for New York City at 9:14 in the morning. And the most interesting sort of pieces around this are the moon is in Gemini. And to your point, getting back to the duality, getting back to the number 11, getting back to the Twin Towers, we have the moon in Gemini, which is square the moon in Pisces, which is what happened with the full moon and the supermoon. And if you go back to 9/11, the original event of 9/11, the moon was in Gemini as well. And the 9/11 Memorial Museum opened at 0 degrees Gemini. That was the day that it opened.
Wow.
So to your point with this 9/14 event, the moon is prominent. And at 9:14 in the morning in New York City, it is in the 8th house, which is a hidden or occulted house. And Mars is almost exactly opposite. It's at 0 degrees Sagittarius. And then there's a T-square. The T-square is happening against what planet? Neptune. So we have Neptune in Pisces, we have the moon in Gemini, and we have Mars in Sagittarius, T-squared to Neptune. So what you're bringing up and what you're articulating definitely has some resonance with what happens or what is happening astrologically that day. Also, Uranus is in the sign of Aries, and it's retrograde, and it is opposite Mercury in Libra. So we have a Uranus-Mercury opposition. And again, whenever we get into the opposition, we get into that flux field and that energy. So very powerful opposition. And then, of course, there's the true node, which is about 4 degrees off, but also opposing Uranus. So very powerful opposition. It's not quite a grand cross. It's almost 3/4 of a grand cross. So the energy of Sunday, the 14th, is very powerful. Very, very powerful, especially with that moon in Gemini.
Wow. There you go. I'm not surprised, but...
I also, I like to look back into history to try to find interesting dates in history. And so I looked up September 14th. And some of the events on September 14th are pretty fascinating. First of all, let's see, how do I frame this? In 786, that you have the night of the three caliphs. And what are we talking about with ISIS? It's the rise of the caliphate, right? The rise of the super Islamic State, which is what the caliphate is. And so
I just want to interject for 1 second that 786 equals 21, so that's 3 sevens, but go ahead.
There we go. Okay, so 786, the night of the three caliphs. And the brief snippet is Harun al-Rashid becomes the Abbasid Caliph upon the death of his brother, al-Hadi, and the birth of Harun's son, al-Ma'um. So we have the crowning of the Caliph, Harun al-Rashid. Okay, that happens in 786. And then what's really interesting is you fast forward in 1741, Handel completes his oratorio Messiah. So we have the Messiah, and we have the Night of the Three Caliphs, or the Rise of the Caliph, also on September 14th. That's in 1741.
1741 is 13, by the way, but go ahead.
Okay, well, you just keep the numbers coming. I'll keep throwing this stuff out there. You keep the numbers coming, okay? Another really interesting event is that Napoleon enters Moscow. He is the Grande Armée, the French Grande Armée, enters Moscow, and then they set Moscow on fire. That's the Napoleonic Wars. That's 1812. 1812. McKinley, President William McKinley, was assassinated on September 14th in 1901.
Right.
Yes. Actually,
1901, 9/11, right?
He's assassinated on the 6th of September, my apologies. And he dies on the 14th of September.
Yeah.
And
it's funny. My video features the McKinley obelisk as part of it, because in Buffalo, where the obelisk is, they've lined up the street grid with Mount Everest. So again, like I mentioned, the deepest lake with the Peace Pyramid, here's another example of them emphasizing something. But so.
Well, that's pretty interesting. So he is succeeded, by the way, by Teddy Roosevelt, the first of the Roosevelts to occupy the Oval Office. And then in 1917, Russia is officially proclaimed a republic. So this is 9/14 is the day where the Bolsheviks proclaimed Russia a republic.
There you go.
So there are a number of really interesting events that happened in history. Another one, the Soviet probe Luna 2 crashes onto the moon. This is in 1959, becoming the first man-made object to reach it, theoretically, in history, right? So this is the first object that reaches the moon. It's on September 14th.
And Christine Lagarde, in her video, mentions the lunar calendar. I mean, that's kind of out of left field, you know? So there's things between it. Oh, the other piece is September 14th is the 257th day of the year, which, again, is 7/7. and there's 108 days till the end of the year, and the 108 is the number of the moon and has great astronomical significance. Like the diameter, or the radius of the moon's 1,080 kilometers or miles, and the radius of the sun's related, and et cetera, et cetera. So just to kind of sync up with what you're saying.
Interesting. Another event that's noteworthy is that in 1960, the year that I was born, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries is founded, also known as OPEC.
Right.
OPEC. And by the way, oil, gas, petroleum, those are all Piscean and Neptunian elements.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, and given how oil is playing so prominently in this, all of this was playing out since 9/11 too, right?
That's right. Absolutely. And I'm sure that there's more, but in 2007, only because I think the name is really interesting. So this would be qualified as the late 2000s financial crisis, which is the run-up to what happened in 2008. This was a precursor event. The Northern Rock Bank. It's an actual bank in the United Kingdom. Experienced its first bank run, meaning that people were pulling their money out of the bank because they were afraid. Right? That's something that's already happened.
Christine Lagarde mentions this 7th anniversary of the financial jitters in her video as well. So that's interesting you mentioned that too.
So there you go. There's a few dates in history that resonate and come into focus during this time. 9/12, Friday, September 2014. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, Kevin? Is there any bits and pieces that you left out or interesting errata that you want to bring to our attention?
Well, so the highway terminates this will just sort of close it up, I guess. The Highway 77 terminates in Sioux City, and coming down in the other direction, there's a direct highway that goes up to the Manitoba Legislative Building, and that highway is I-29, which I is the 9th letter of the alphabet, so you have 9/11. So going up to all the 13s at the Manitoba Legislative Building, and there's more. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. The Georgia. Oh, there's way more. Yeah, there's a lot more. It's in the video, but there's a fair amount more in the video, but I can't really go into it right here. So.
Okay, so let's give Kevin some props here. If you go to my show page, you can go to the video that he has posted about this, and you can see it all in detail with all the lines and the structures, so it actually makes pictorial visual sense. You can go to my show page and just click on that link, and you can go to the video. What's your YouTube channel, Kevin?
It's peacegardensecrets.com. I mean, that's my website, and then my YouTube channel is also Peace Garden Secrets.
Okay, so he has a website, peacegardensecrets.com, and Peace Garden is the YouTube video channel. And you have more than one... Peace Garden Secrets, my bad. Do you have more than one video there?
Oh yeah, I got a whole pile.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let me ask you a question before we shake hands and wish each other well. One of the things that I have noticed, and other people have taken note of as well, is that Cliff High. Are you familiar with Cliff High?
Nope.
Cliff High. He is a researcher. And he would put together these reports, and the reports were based on web spiders that he and his partner, George Ure, would send out. He started off as financial reports, and the data back as to, they would basically send out all these web crawlers, and they would find out.
Well, that was the interview with Kevin, and I'm just going to cut myself off there from rambling further and on about Cliff High, who still is a pretty active member in the game, as it were. So that, you know, nothing happened on September 14th. And maybe it had something to do with the fact that Kevin broke all of this down in a very particular way, and maybe, you know, flipped a switch in the Matrix. But there are two things that I really wanted to take note of with that interview. Is that, number one, I just wanted to bring attention to people's attention to Kevin's research skills and how he's able to line things up. And I have his latest video, the magnum opus, which he created on 9/11. That's on my Facebook page, and maybe I'll post it on my website. This was the last video that Kevin made. And the other thing that came to mind was that we were talking about this trident effect, and how there were three prongs to the trident. And one prong was JFK, the other prong was 9/11. I think the third prong of the trident is actually Las Vegas. And if Kevin were alive, it'd be very interesting to see his bits and pieces that he would put together at such a high level. And he was so gifted in that way. So, Kevin, I'm sure you're getting a lot more answers, or you're dealing with a lot more questions at this point in time. And at this point in time, what I'd like to do is I'd like to thank some people for being incredibly generous and donating to the show. And I'm really taken back by the gratitude and the generosity. So I just want to give some first name thanks to Kathleen and John and Harold and Linda and Peter. Thank you for donating. Again, really appreciated. Let's see, who else do we have here? I've got a whole list. Yvonne, thank you very much. Lamont, a big thanks to you for donating as well. Alexandra, thank you. Thank you. Christopher, two Christophers, and Christy, thank you for your donations. I appreciate it. Let's see what else. Just gotta open up another window here. Let's see. Come on, you gotta show more. Okay, Julianne and Judith, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Annie, thank you. Richard, thank you. Jim E., thank you. Jolene, thank you. Shanti, thank you. Robin, thank you. Sally, thank you. Sandra, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anna, thank you. Madeline, thank you. Steve and Chris, thank you. Shannon, thank you. Annette, thank you. Carrie, thank you. And I think that about covers it. So everybody who I mentioned on the list, thank you again. I really appreciate the support. It goes a long ways. It keeps things floating so that we can continue our quest for truth and love, and evolving through this experience as being a human during this time. And we're all part of it, and I'm just doing my part to be a conduit for whatever it is that decides to come through. And again, I'll just say it one more time, thank you again. I appreciate it very, very much. And if I haven't sent you a personal thank you, I will do that today. I'm still working on getting those out. So that about wraps it up for today's show. I just wanted to pay homage to Kevin and let you hear some of his brilliant work. And even though nothing took place on 9/14, I think the one thing that we can bring out of it or take out of it is this piece with the trident and the third prong. So just to let you know, I started off the show talking about how the whole thing was a distraction. The Mandalay Bay and the shots and the windows are all distractions. that everything was on the ground. And so it was just a hunch, right? I'm just like, okay, I'm running with this. This is my intuition. It's a hunch. And then sure enough, I start finding all kinds of evidence that's clearly the case. One of the people who's really interesting to follow at times, although I don't always agree with everything that he posts, but he's certainly a firebrand. He wouldn't come on my show. He kind of laughed at me. That's okay though. I'll still recommend this stuff. Jim Stone, you can check out Jim Stone's work. You can find him online, and that's exactly what he's saying. He's not the only one. The people are starting to come around now that there were boots on the ground and bullets coming from multiple directions inside the actual concert itself. So that's the place that we got to start looking. It's not at the Mandalay. It is not 32 floors above, even though that's where the cops were going, even though that's where our boy was staged, who's likely now probably a Barry Seal type character. And that the people that knew him didn't really know him at all. He just sent his girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley, $100,000. He just wired her $100,000. Apparently he was getting ready to go to the Philippines and check out. Maybe this was his last big deal. Well, it didn't work out. So, all right, keep your eyes peeled on what's happening with college and pro football tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the wake of Las Vegas. What are the NFL players going to do? Are they going to take a knee again? You know, did it take a massive death count in Las Vegas with this random shooter to get them off their knee and put their hand over their heart? Not that I'm saying that they need to. Okay, it's like I think the national anthem before a sporting event is kind of ridiculous. But if people want to do it and they want to do it, that's fine. You don't have to make the athletes do it. You should just keep them in the locker room. Because if I was an athlete, I'd feel manipulated, to be honest with you. And that's the truth. And I've been to football games where they did that stuff, and I got to tell you, I looked away. I mean, I looked away because I couldn't abide by what the country was doing. You know, and it was really what was happening abroad and all the crap that I knew about. I'm like, oh my God, we got to stand up for this, please. It insults my intelligence, my emotional IQ. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens on Sunday if these guys get up off their knees. Oh, by the way, we got to end this on perhaps a lighter note. I don't know. Cam Newton, who plays quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, was at a press conference, and there was a woman reporter asking him about the routes that the receivers are running during a game. And Cam was like, really? A woman's asking me about routes? Oh, man. Cam Newton lost his... Okay, this is kind of harsh. This is really kind of harsh. Cam Newton lost his sponsorship deal with Dannon because he reps their Oikos Greek yogurt. You'll never see the Cam Newton Oikos commercials anymore, ever again, because they thought that what he said was... I mean, was he uninformed? Was he naive? Is Cam a little provincial? Yeah, he is. Did he call her, a terrible name? Did he say that she was a slut or a bitch or a whore? It's like I don't know. It boggles my mind. He's a guy that's living in another time, right? Somebody didn't give Cam Newton the memo that it's the 21st century, and you better talk and act accordingly, brother. And then you have these patronizing assholes like Bill Cowher. And they're acting like Cam Newton denied the Holocaust. It's mind-blowing. He said something dumb. He didn't hit anybody. You would think that it was the equivalent of him bludgeoning this woman. He said something stupid. And he lost an endorsement deal. And here's Bill Cowher. You know, other people say, well, let's just see what happens in the future. You know, there's speech and there's actions. What the fuck are these people trying to prove? I'm sorry. It's like, did Cam Newton rape this woman? You would think that that's what he did. Based on the sanctimonious bullshit. No, I'm not in favor of what he said. It's stupid. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, women reporters have been, I mean, is this the first time Cam Newton's ever run across a female reporter? Are you kidding me? I mean, that's the part that's like, Cam, hello? They've been doing this for a while now, brother. You know, to me, that kind of, really, if anything, that is a display of self-absorption. That Cam Newton is so about Cam and all about Cam that he doesn't look around the landscape and understand that, guess what? This woman, her name is Rodriguez, and many other women like her have been reporting on sports for a very long time. It's nothing new. I just think he's provincial, naive, and self-absorbed. But he didn't hit her, didn't rape her, didn't call her any names. He just said something stupid, and all these people are wringing their hands. Oh, poor Cam. You know, and I'm like, I'm watching Mike Florio on the Pro Football Talk yesterday morning, and he's saying, well, if he were younger, you know, a few days of rehabilitation could have set him straight. Are you kidding me? This is the world we're living in, man. Boy, you better not screw up and say the wrong thing, or else just think about that. He said something dumb, and he lost a sponsorship deal. There's Bill Cowher. Bill Cowher. I've got girls. Like he took it personally, like it was an affront to his daughters. Give me a break. An affront to all women. No, he's just naive, self-absorbed, provincial. And he said something that was stupid and not informed. But he didn't swear, didn't call her names, didn't cross any lines, didn't hit her. Greg Hardy beat his girlfriend to within 3 breaths of her life. And this guy gets picked up by Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. He gets to play pro football. He's not with them anymore. But he gets to play pro football and make a salary after he did his suspension time. And yet here Cam Newton says something really stupid. And they want to flay him. I don't know. And I'm not a big Cam Newton guy. I'm just not. He's, you know, he was on my fantasy team last year. He was worthless. No, I'm just kidding. He was worthless, but that's not why. I'm just not a huge fan. He strikes me as being the epitome of kind of the young, self-absorbed athlete. And that's really what it was. It was a moment of self-absorption. That's all. And he's not informed. Bottom line. But do I think he deserves to have his Dannon sponsorship revoked? No, I don't think so. You know, they should have sat down with him and said, hey, look, you know, let's try to turn this into something positive. You know, let's turn it into, hey, you know, in a commercial, there's going to be a woman playing a quarterback, and she's going to tell you how to run a route inside of a grocery store to go find Dannon on aisle 6. Like, make fun of it. Play with it. Get creative with it. The world takes itself way too seriously. God, it makes me sick. It just makes me sick. And here I am kind of defending Cam Newton in a weird way. I'm not defending what he said. It was just dumb and uninformed. You know, unfortunately, you know, we've opened the door to locker room talk now. And anytime there's any kind of locker room talk, you better be careful. And that wasn't even locker room talk. He was just misinformed. It's in that locker room talk genre. I'll tell you, If Jemele Hill would have said it, she'd still have her job. Bitch, what do you know about routes? Jemele Hill will still be employed. Jemele Hill can say anything. Jemele Hill might be the most powerful person on the planet right now. Think about that. She just out and out ripped Trump to shreds. She gets to keep her job. No problem. ESPN, no problem. We talked to her about it. That's a Jemele thing on the side. She's still doing her job. I'm telling you right now, Jemele Hill is the most powerful person on the planet. How would you feel if you were Jemele Hill? You'd say, can you believe the shit I just got away with? Man, that's a powerful moment. I'm telling you right now. So if she said that about the sports reporter, that'd be real interesting. Because based on the Tommy Sotomayor hierarchy, Jemele Hill trumps everyone, including Trump. So just a little notice. And by the way, is Trump anymore? Is Trump anymore? Got a text from one of my favorite people in the world who said that Trump is not Trump. That doesn't even sound like him. Who is this guy now? What are we dealing with as a president? Question mark. All right. So let's wrap it there. And again, Kevin, wherever you are, man, I hope you're getting some answers. And if you can somehow work with us from that side of the reality, curtain, the other side of the curtain, still engage with us. If you can somehow work with us and bring your brilliance into this world from that level, we're wide open, man. I'm here for you. I'm here for you on this show, and anybody else who's connected to you. Your work is never finished. It's all one continuum. Remember that, each and every one of you. All right, let's bring today's show to a close. I'll be back on Sunday nights with the live stream. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix.